The hunting party returned at dawn, their scales gleaming with morning frost and the blood of their prey. Dronik led them, his massive form barely fitting through the reinforced entrance of the research station. Behind him, 6 other Krathi warriors dragged the carcasses of what the humans called sky whales, massive, aerial creatures that migrated across this moon's upper atmosphere. Myra Solon stood in the observation bay, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips, watching the procession with mounting horror. "Dr. Solon," Dronik rumbled, his translator struggling with the proud resonance in his voice. "The cubs have brought sustenance. You will eat properly now. This had gotten out of hand. It started 3 weeks ago, innocently enough." Myra had been running nutritional analyses on Krathi dietary requirements, fascinated by how these apex predators could sustain their enormous frames. Each adult stood nearly 12 feet tall on surprisingly modest portions. Their metabolism was a marvel of efficiency. During her research, she'd worked closely with a group of young Krathi, barely past their juvenile stage. In human terms, they were teenagers, curious, energetic, and increasingly concerned about the strange alien scientists who'd come to study their colony. The young ones, the cubs, as Myra had affectionately nicknamed them, watched her eat. Or rather, they watched her not eat enough by their standards. "You consumed only 1 meal yesterday," a cub named Vesik had observed, his amber eyes filled with what Myra could only describe as distress. "And it was ... small," Myra had laughed, trying to explain human metabolism, portion sizes, the concept of snacking. "I'm fine, really. Humans don't need as much food as Krathi. We're smaller, our bodies work differently, but the cubs didn't understand. Or perhaps they understood too well. In Krathi culture, ensuring the pack was fed was sacred. The strong hunted for the weak, the healthy for the sick, the many for the few. It wasn't charity, it was survival, identity, purpose, and somehow Myra had become part of their pack. The morning after that conversation, she'd found a small carcass outside her quarters, then another, and then 3 more. She'd tried to explain to the cubs' parents. Tried to make them understand she wasn't starving, wasn't in danger. But Krathi emotional logic was binary in certain respects. Either a pack member was adequately fed, or they were not. There was no middle ground. And now, Dronik, the colony's master hunter, the cubs' primary mentor, had taken personal interest. "Dronik, please," Myra said, setting down her coffee and activating her translator. "This is too much. I can't possibly eat all of this." The great hunter's head tilted, a gesture of confusion. "The cubs reported your consumption remains insufficient. We have calculated your body mass. Even accounting for species differences, you do not eat enough to sustain yourself. I eat exactly enough to sustain myself. That's how human bodies work." "Impossible," Dronik's tail lashed once, a sign of agitation. "We have observed you. You grow fatigued in the afternoons. You consume stimulant beverages. Your temperature regulation is poor. These are signs of malnourishment." Myra opened her mouth, then closed it. He wasn't entirely wrong. She did rely too heavily on coffee. She did skip meals when she got absorbed in her work. She had lost a few pounds since arriving on this moon, mostly from forgetting to eat during long research sessions, but she wasn't starving. She was just a typical overworked scientist. Dronik, in human culture, this would be considered normal. Maybe not ideal, but normal. The hunter's scales rippled, the Krathi equivalent of a frown. "Your culture permits pack members to suffer inadequate nutrition?" "It's not suffering, it's just... the cubs are distressed," Dronik interrupted, his voice dropping to a lower register. "They have claimed you as pack kin? They cannot sleep knowing you hunger. Last night, young Vesik refused his own meal, saying it should go to you instead." Myra felt something twist in her chest. "He what?" "A juvenile, denying himself sustenance out of concern for an elder pack member." Dronik's eyes met hers. "This is a great honor he shows you, Dr. Solon, but it cannot continue. So we hunt, we bring abundance. The cubs will know peace." And there it was, the fundamental disconnect. She'd been viewing this through a human lens, well-meaning but misguided aliens being overly helpful. But for the Krathi, this was existential. The cubs weren't being silly or overprotective. They were fulfilling their deepest biological and cultural imperative. They were taking care of their pack. Myra looked out at the hunting party, at the massive sky whale carcasses, at Dronic's earnest, reptilian face. At the cubs emerging from the colony entrance, their eyes bright with hope and anticipation. She thought about Thesic, refusing his dinner. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, I understand." Dronic's scales brightened, pleasure rippling across his body. "But," Myra continued, "we need to find a compromise. I physically cannot eat this much, but I can eat more regularly, with the cubs, shared meals. I can make sure they see me eating properly. You will join the pack meal cycle?" Dronic's translator couldn't quite capture the hope in his voice. "Yes, 3 times a day. And I'll let them bring me food, but smaller portions, appropriate for a human. We can even make it educational. I'll teach them about human nutrition, and they can teach me proper crothy hunting techniques." For a moment, Dronic stood perfectly still. Then he threw back his head and let out a bellowing call that shook the station's walls. Within seconds, the cubs came streaming out, rushing toward Myra with obvious joy. Thesic reached her first, his young scales shimmering with excitement. "You will eat with us?" "Properly?" Myra knelt down. The cubs were already almost her height and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I will eat with you." "I promise, and thank you, Thesic, for caring about me." The young Crothy's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of deep emotion. "You are packkin, Dr. Solon. We protect our own." Later, as Myra sat in the communal hall surrounded by young Crothy, forcing herself to finish a reasonably sized portion of roasted meat while they chirped encouragement, she reflected on the unexpected turn her research had taken. She'd come to this moon to study an alien species. Instead, she'd been adopted by one, and honestly, being part of a pack that would hunt the sky itself to keep her fed? There were worse fates for a lonely xenobiologist 2 systems from home.